I said, kids climb trees? And she's like, whoa, kids shouldn't be climbing trees. And I said, excuse me?
Welcome to Exploring Mind and Body with Drew Tadia. Drew is an expert in nutrition, fitness, lifestyle, and more. And he wants to help you live a healthier, longer, and more active life. Now here's your host, Drew Tadia.
Welcome to another edition of nationally syndicated Exploring Mind and Body. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of our True Form Life community, whether you're listening on terrestrial radio across the world or if you were listening as a podcast around the world. It's pretty cool to be on a radio all over the place in different countries and such. But at any rate, wherever you're listening, we appreciate you being here and hanging out. Today, it's going to be me chopping it up with you. I'm going to tell you a very, very interesting story about how I was approached at the park from some supervisor in the town we live in, and they told me I cannot use the trees to work out at the park. That's absolutely bizarre. I know, but I got a lot to say about it, and that's not even the message around. I got a bunch of different messages. I was thinking about this, and it really hit me in many different ways, but I'm going to talk about kids and health, and I'm going to mention about how our culture, how our civilization, how we need to heal and come together and stop trying to make people do stuff that you shouldn't be telling them not to do. But we'll get into all that. So sit back and enjoy. We got all that coming up.
This is Exploring Mind and Body. Naturally improve your lifestyle one show at a time with your host, Drew Tadia.
All right, so here it is. I have been a TRX fan for years. I don't even know how long. I love TRX. I love full body weight movements. If you're not sure what a TRX is they have a bunch of different knockoffs now. But when the TRX was the first to market, it was actually designed by some type of military guy. You put the TRX on the Humvee and you can work out wherever you want. Super cool idea. Like I said, there's a bunch of knockoffs there. I don't really care. I don't have any skin in the game. I don't sell them. I don't get a commission off them. So whatever you want to buy. But I love the TRX. I got a couple legitimate ones. And anyways, it's a band. It looks like a band. It's a cool thing. It's got handles on it. You can put it on a tree. You can travel with it. You can put it on your door in your hotel room. And you can do any body weight exercise. Push-ups, sit-ups, squats, crunches. You don't do a sit-up on the band, of course. But it can hit the whole body in many different ways. It's a fantastic tool. Remember, I'm not selling the TRX. So I tie my TRX, like I've done this. I'm in Alberta right now, but I'm in Alberta. I've taken this all across Alberta. I've taken this in LA. Everywhere I go, I take the TRX band because I like to work out. Working out's important to me, mentally, physically. Most of you know who I am and what I'm about. We've been running a health business for over 10 years now at this point. I've been in professional sports 10 years before that. So it's what I do. It's my life. So I put the TRX band on the tree like I've been doing here at this park in the years past. And I've been doing this for probably a couple weeks at this point in time. Anyways, I'm finishing my workout. I got my headphones in. I'm listening to my own podcast, Exploring Mind and Body. No, I'm just kidding. I'm listening to it. I like audiobooks. Now, this doesn't matter. I'm listening to different audiobooks. I think this one I'm actually just started listening to is called the Silva Method on not mind control, but mind exercises. At any rate, it's what I really enjoy learning and reading and listening. And it was a really cool book. At any rate, I'm interrupted. I'm just finishing push-ups. I'm actually doing push-ups on a park bench. I already have the TRX down. It's packed up. And she comes up to me and she says something along the lines of, you're not able to use this park for exercise. And I'm like, excuse me? And she's like, well, particularly the trees. She's like, the trees aren't meant for that. And I'm like, they're not meant for what? And she's like, well, we're meant to exercise on. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then at this point in time, like, I'm getting a bit like, this is confrontational, right? Like, and this whole conversation was polite, professional. There's no anger. There's no yelling on either side. This is just a conversation. But my spidey senses are like, something's wrong here. So she says something like, the park isn't the trees aren't meant for that. And I'm asking you politely not to use the trees for that in the future. And I'm like, like everything in my body was screaming. Like, what is she talking about? That's wrong. And she's not right. So then we get into conversation, and I'm just saying, like, well, what are the trees for? And she says the trees are for shade and to look at. And I said, I'm gonna disagree with you right there. I said the trees are for whatever you want to use the trees for. And I kept saying, like I said, and many times I said, the trees, as long as you're respectfully using these parks, it could be a bench, it could be a tree, it could be whatever. I said, the trees are here for our community to use. I said, kids climb trees? And she's like, whoa, kids shouldn't be climbing trees. And I said, excuse me? Kids should not be climbing trees? And she said, that's not what the trees are for. And I said, I'm gonna go ahead and disagree with you. I said, that's what's wrong with our society. You know, and she's like, oh, I can see her eyes getting a little bigger. And she's like, oh, this is probably the wrong person to have this conversation with. And I said, you're talking about child obesity. You're talking about child diabetes. We're talking about self-image, getting kids outside, stop playing so many video games, breathe fresh air. And I'm listing all this. I'm trying to remember what I said and tell you at the same time. But it's all coming out. It's all coming out. That lady was in the wrong spot at the wrong time. And she said, so again, we were having these conversations, and she says, and I said, who are you? What's your name? What's your position? Like, what is your job? I said, is your job to monitor parks and tell people what they can and can't be doing? And she says, well, I'm the supervisor of the parks in this town of Olds. And I say, okay, well, that's fantastic. So what's your job description? And she's like, well, we manage the parks, and we fix up the trees. They prune the trees, and they make it. And I said, that's great. I said, you guys do a fantastic job. I love this park. Thank you for making beautiful parks in our community. Thanks for keeping it clean. And I appreciate what you're doing, but this isn't your job. Like, this is not your job, what you're doing right now. And she says, well, when we just ran into a group of kids that were climbing trees, and they broke a bunch of branches, and then we had to fix the branches. And I was like, okay, but that's your job. And she's like, it's not my job to fix broken trees because they shouldn't be broken. I'm like, but when they're broken, you fix them, right? And then I said something along the lines. I said, I live in this town. I've lived in here for years, always worked out. I said, I appreciate what you guys are doing. I'm paying taxes, which means I'm in part helping you stay employed for you to go ahead and fix the parks, which again, we appreciate. But if something like that happens, you got to take care of it. That's your job. Your job's not to be telling people what to do. She says, well, my job is to be telling people what to do if they're destroying property. And I said, great. Am I destroying property? And she says, well, what you're doing is you're encouraging kids to destroy property. And I said, whoa, you are out of line. You are so out of line. I said, we are in this community. We've been running fitness classes outside. We do events. We do donations. We do, like, everything we do in this town is for our community, to help our community grow and inspire, live healthy. I said, I'm out here exercising so people in our community can see that I'm setting a good example. I'm just not talking about working out. This is how I live. And I said, I'm setting a good example to let the people in our community know you should be out here using the parks, enjoying fresh air, enjoying sunshine. And I said, kids need to be out here. They should be climbing trees. And she's like, whoa, no. They shouldn't be climbing trees because they ruin the trees. And then I don't think the taxpayers would be happy for me paying. And I said, for me paying to fix the trees. I said, I am a taxpayer. And I said, if that happens, I'm more than happy to help pay for you to fix our facilities. And she says, well, you're out here showing kids that that's okay. And what am I supposed to do if they're breaking trees? And I said, if they're ruining trees. And I said, okay. I said, then you step in. I have to give her job description. I said, that's great. Then you step in, or you tell the parent to step in, or you probably shouldn't have to. That's the parent's responsibility. At any rate, regardless of what happens in a destructive manner, that has nothing to do with what I'm doing right here. Absolutely nothing. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I'm showing people how to respectfully use a tree or a piece of equipment, if you will. And it was absolutely bizarre. And I did a short version of this on one of our Facebook Live groups, and the people were appalled, and they should be. My point is, I got a bunch of points here, but one of my points here is that individual feels that it's okay to walk up to people that are using the parks and enjoying the facilities. Of course, like, she kind of ruined my day a bit. Like, I came back and I was steaming hot. I guess let me finish the story. So she said, and I said, you know what? I said, here's the tree. And I said, you know what? There's a bunch of trash around this tree. There's food. There was a little bit of garbage. There was food. There was like half-eaten cucumbers. There was like a handful of corn nuts. And I'm like trying to work out around this tree, avoiding avoiding this disgusting food that's half eaten. And I said, what? I said, is that in your job description? I said, if you want, you could clean up some of this food. That might be nice. And she didn't like that very much. So she said, well, how can we come to a compromise? Like we were kind of debating back and forth. And I just said, and she said a couple times, I'm asking you politely not to use the trees. And I said, that's fine. You're more than welcome to ask a request, but that's your opinion. And my opinion is very, very different. I said, these trees, people, like I imagine some people might think I'm crazy, but I said, and I told her this, I said, you might think I'm a bit crazy, but I love trees. I love nature. I love our environment. I love our earth and our planet. I believe trees are alive and living. They're breathing. They're growing. I feel like they like people to be around them. Is this crazy? Send me a message on social media. You think I'm crazy? No, if you don't think I'm crazy, that'd be helpful. So I said, trees like to be climbed on. They want to have a picnic under them and cleaned up after. They want to be used. They want a slackline tied around them so they can be used, and they like laughter and joy and happipiness, and to provide shelter and to look at nicely, but not, I mean, of course, not destructively, but not to just sit there and be alone. I feel like they're lonely. I feel like trees are lonely in a park, and they like it when they're used and there's people around. And so I said, if I'm working out on this tree, I feel like that tree enjoys that. If I'm climbing this tree, that tree enjoys that. And kids, at any rate. And I didn't tell her all that. I just told her a little bit. And she's like, I don't disagree with you. She said, but that's just not what the tree is for. And I said, well, I'm sorry. That's just not going to happen. He said, I'm going to be here unless you tell me I'm breaking the law or there's some type of bylaw. And she's like, well, I said, I'll call the bylaw officer if you want to do it. If you want to go that route, let's call them. And she's like, well, how can we come to a compromise or an agreement here? I said, I don't think we will, because we have very different opinions, and that's all they are, is opinions. Unless there's some law I don't know about, then. And she says, okay. And I said, well, you know what? I said, I could show you if you want, because I've been using the trees for years. I know what I'm doing. You put the tree on a branch. I don't like to destroy the tree either, personally, quite honestly. So I put the tree on a branch that doesn't have a bunch of leaves on, or baby branches that the bend rubs a little bit. So I don't break any of those little branches. And then you put it close to the trunk, because the closest to the trunk is as strong as it's going to be. And it has to run parallel to the ground, not perpendicular. So I can't put the bend isn't big enough to put it around the trunk. This is a very tiny tree. I got to put it on a branch that's running parallel to the ground. So you get a big enough stem, or what's it called? Branch? Stem. You get a big enough stem or branch, and that's strong enough. And then you put that as close to the trunk as possible. You put the band around the branch as close to the trunk. There is a way to do it. So I was like, okay, let's go. I'll show you what I'm doing, and you can tell me if I'm destroying things. So we walk over to the tree. I put my TRX band on there. And I'm like, and I do a body row, so that's almost my full body weight. And I'm like, this is probably this is the hardest exercise, or the most weight that's going to be on this tree. I said, do you see this and doing any damage? And she's like, no. And I said, is there anything I'm doing here that you think I shouldn't be doing? And she's like, instead of being understanding and being like, okay, you know what? You're probably right. Like we should do. It's very difficult for people to say, I'm wrong, I'm sorry, you're right. Across the board, we would solve so many issues in this world if someone just said, I'm sorry in most cases, or I'm wrong. That'll work. You're right. That'll work too. But she didn't want to admit that. She looked at the tree, absolutely no damage. She's like, well, she says, well, it looks like that could be a bit pruned a little bit. And I'm like, what are you talking about, lady? Well, that's your job. You can prune it. I'm talking about what you said. I'm damaging the tree. Am I damaging the tree? And she's like, well, I'm going to have to talk to bylaw about this. And I'm like, great. I said, I'll call bylaw right now. And of course, her eyes get a little bit bigger. And she thinks like, she didn't think I was serious. And I was like, and she's like, okay, well, I have the number. Okay, give me the number. And then I took down the number, and I got the number. I'm like, what's your name and what's your position? I take her name, take her title, like some kind of parks supervisor, some nonsense. And that was pretty much it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I missed. That's pretty much it. So I called the bylaw, and I'm like, hey guys, and I didn't get anyone. I got some receptionist, and they ended up never getting back to me. But what happened was I threw a short snippet up on social media, got a bunch of feedback. Tons and tons of people sent me supportive messages saying, good job, we appreciate that. Because here's the thing, is that lady being put in that place of power, which she didn't really have, she just thought she had, could be walking around parks in town telling kids that they can't play at parks, they can't climb trees, they're causing destruction. here's an example. There's a skate park connected right to there's a skate park within this big park I was working out at. And I said to her, okay, let's use an example. I said, there's a skate park right there. If one person finds a way to destroy that skate park, let's say maybe they're on their skate park, their skateboard, and they're spray painting the ground or the wall while they're skating. Does that mean that skate park is not safe or available for anyone else to use? Or is it just that individual that's using it irresponsibly? And she like blank stare. And this is probably one of the times where she has no what to say. And she says, I'm asking you politely. And I'm like, that's fine. That's perfectly okay. But you're taking two very different scenarios of me leading by example, using this tree, using this facility, use this park in a very respectful manner. And you're trying to put me in a category with someone else that could possibly be destroying trees. And I don't even know if that actually happened. Guessing she could have just made that up to try to prove a point. So then we have the skate park there. And like it's this exact same scenario. If someone is destroying it, you don't shut the whole thing down and say no one can use it anymore. You talk to that individual and try to make things right. At any rate, so we go through. I call the bylaw, and I was going to call the town, and I was like, I don't know how big of a deal to make this. I kind of want to get on with my day in my life, and the town, some representative from the town actually called me, and they said, hey, we bounced back and forth with phone calls and emails. The guy was very, very respectful, very professional. He called, he sent me a quick email and said, I know we've been trying to get a hold of each other. He was in meetings, I was bouncing around. And he said, in short or in summary, we apologize for this happening to you. This person should never approach you. So anyways, we finally connected on the phone, and he said, look, Drew, I'm so sorry this happened to you. That should have never happened. That individual should have never approached you. They were in the wrong. And he said, we're doing the best we can to educate our people. This is a new position or a new person at the position. I don't remember exactly which, but and we apologize. And that should have went to management. And then he said like a couple like odd things. I don't know if he saw the live video I did, if he saw the replay. I don't think so because it's in a private group, but I'm guessing it's a small town. There's 10,000 people here, maybe 12,000. And I've been here for 10 years. Most people know who I am. I've trained people at the town. Like we've went in there and we've ran programs for the employees at the town. We have run classes in and around this town for years. We train we did the sports and conditioning for the local college. People know who I am. Like I'm not like I'm trying to hide or it's not like if you throw my name around a little bit, like I've been on the radio for 10 years in town here. So people know who I am. It's not like you mention my name and no one's going to know. So I don't know if he knew who I was or if someone told them, but he said, I don't know who told them. Like, I don't know what they told them, but he said, we don't want people to think that kids can't climb trees in this town. That's a little bit ridiculous. And then he said, we're going to use this as a training exercise. We got to do a better job. And, like, hands down, they did a fantastic job, without question. I don't have a problem with that. I think they did a very good job of actually apologizing. And see, if you apologize in a situation when you know you're wrong, and I said the same thing. I said, you know what? We have employees. I understand where you're coming from. We're trying to train our people the best we can. That comes from management. Like, management always has to take responsibility. They rarely do, but you have to say that's our responsibility and we'll take care of it. That's the best way to go about it. That's the easiest way to decompress the situation, not escalate it like this individual talking about bylaw and what her job is and what I'm supposed to be doing. It is absolutely preposterous for someone. And one of the things for someone to come and say you can't do that. And here's the thing is like, so kids want to play in parks. And how many times did she go and tell kids that they can't play in the parks? And now they're growing up thinking they can't use the parks? Or consider this, you have someone that's intimidated by the gym, self-conscious, trying to lose weight, trying to feel better about themselves. They start using the parks and that individual comes up to them and says they can't do that. So even for me, like I'm a pretty confident person. I don't have a problem speaking my mind, as you can tell. And since that happened, I've kind of been a bit self-conscious about the park because I'm like, there was obviously a meeting. That individual, I don't know if they were scolded or told what they should be doing or not be doing, but in the conversation with the guys, he said, I saw a picture of the tree. It looked fine. So I'm like, so someone took a picture of the band or myself working out. And then it wasn't even that lady. It was someone else. It was and they employ a lot of kids to do those summer jobs, which is fine, which is great. But I'm guessing one of the kids, this is what it sounded like from the phone call. One of the kids was like, I don't know if this person's supposed to be doing that. Maybe they're going to wreck the tree. I don't know what the conversation was, but I believe from there, that supervisor came over and was like, I'll handle this. And they came and told me what I couldn't do. And I was like, like that was the wrong time and the wrong person. And but that's my point. And that's what's troublesome to me, is that it could have been any other person or many other people that avoid controversy or do exactly what they're told, regardless of using your own brain, which has been happening the last 2 years. I'll touch on before I wrap things up here. But you can't just go up to someone and tell them what to do and they're going to do it. I mean, people do that, but that's not me. So I guess my point is that she could have been already telling a bunch of people that, or in this case, I hope that I was the first person. And then she's like, okay, that's a bad idea. I should just stick to my job and not try to enforce my power on people. But here's another one of my points, is that over the last 2 years, since all this nonsense started with COVID and the restrictions, and it's the politicians for sure, it's the mainstream media for sure. They told us it's okay to ask people if they're vaccinated. They told us it's okay to encourage vaccination. We're trying to get people to, they were trying to push vaccinations on people to get other people to get protect me, stop being selfish. It was a giant propaganda war of what exactly we should and shouldn't be doing with their own bodies. And now you have, I'm not going to get into too much politics here. I'm going to wrap this show up here soon. But now you have our prime minister, and he's saying, when it comes to the women and abortions, he said, it's your right to do what you want with your body. So excuse me, I actually think he said that any woman that wants to come to Canada, I don't know what that works, what the paperwork looks like, but if they want to come to Canada and do what they want with their own body, he'll respect that. But they'd have to be vaccinated to come into our country. Which is bizarre, right? But here's more of my point, is that over the last 2 years, we've had people in authoritative types of positions trying to implement or trying to pressure people to do things that they don't want to do. And most people crumble. Like, most people probably did something they didn't want to do at some point, whether that's wear a mask, whether that's getting vaccinated, whether that's getting boosters on top of that. People were losing their jobs, and I'm sure in 10 years this is going to be looked on as one of the most ridiculous times in history. I hope so anyways. But people were literally losing their jobs for not being vaccinated, which is bonkers. They did that in hospitals, and then the nurses started losing their jobs that refused to get vaxxed, and then they welcomed the nurses back as long as they take an antigen test or some kind of PCR test. Some of them went back, some of them didn't, but then they're talking about how it's everyone else's fault for not getting vaxxed and taking care of themselves because the hospitals are filling up and they don't have enough staff. Meanwhile, they fired half the staff for not being vaxxed. Like, it was just a absolute mess, monster of a mess that they created, and then they tried to blame the people for it, firing people, bringing them back, and then there's clear data out now that there's trying to say that the hospitals are filled up with just unvaxxed people, and now we have clear data saying the numbers were fudged for whatever reason. And of course, they didn't tell you the truth, but why they were messed with the numbers. But they were also saying that now we're starting to understand that there's people still getting COVID, or you can still get and spread it if you have been vaccinated. So it's not just the unvaxxed, it's just a giant mess. So at any rate, my point here is that we have people in these positions that over the last 2 years, they think it's okay to put their opinion on other people. So you could look at your boss or your manager at work. That person said, it's my right for whatever. Of course, we're breaking the Charter of Rights and the actual the rules and laws. But because we're in a state of emergency, they can basically make up any law they want. So you have managers or bosses in a position to be like, you need to be vaccinated or you can't work here, when they have no business doing that. Then you can look at the grocery store when all this madness first started. You couldn't go into the grocery store unless you had a mask on, and then that kind of was loosely regulated after a while. And then so I went in there without a mask one time, and I don't, it's not really my thing. And the lady at the register was like, hey, I could feel inner turmoil, she's really supposed to say something but maybe not want to. And then she ended up saying, hey, you know what, you really should be wearing a mask. And I said, it's great. I was like, you know what, you should be running my groceries through, because that's your job. It's not your job to regulate what I'm wearing on my face or on my shoes or on my feet. Your job. And so, the thing is she actually ended up bringing in my groceries wrong, which made me so mad. There was a couple discount items I grabbed and she charged me full price for them. Made me so mad that she thought it was her job to tell me what I should and shouldn't be doing, when her job was to run my groceries through correctly and give me my discounts when I go to the discount rack. Same thing happened another time. A volunteer at a voting station tried to get me to put a mask on, and I was like, I was like, what are you talking about? You're like, that's not their job. That's not their position. It was like a teacher, and teachers are really good at doing exactly what they're told because they work for the government, and if they don't, they get in trouble. I don't know. It's really those government jobs, and it's really difficult to say anything else about them because they're paying your salary. And like it's like they give such good benefits, at least up here in Canada, and they pay such a good wage. They can basically treat you however they want. They put all the tough kids in one class for the best teachers because they think they can handle them. Then those teachers get no support. Then those teachers are strung out and they end up quitting. And then you have less and less quality teachers at schools. I feel like the whole school system is upside down and probably going in the wrong direction. But it's probably for another topic. At any rate, this one individual was telling me what I should be doing when they're just a volunteer, and all they were doing is trying to get people to wait in line or directing people to go vote at what station. Absolutely no business trying to tell me what to do. And that's the point, though. That's what I'm trying to get at here, is that we as a society, we need healing. Like, if you talk, like, we're very connected to the school systems, and we know that kids are 2 years behind in schooling because they kept shutting down the schools. Like, let's shut down the schools. Like, don't worry about the kids or what's going to happen in their future. They shut down the schools. They, like, the whole facial recognition and laughing and breathing, and it was an absolute mess. I don't know what's happening now. I don't really follow it. And then the last 2 years, they've opened things up in the summer and then shut them down in the fall. So anyone that has half a brain must be thinking that it's possible they're going to shut things down again in the fall for whatever reason. But my point here is that there's all kinds of people in these I want to say like power positions, because they're not. They just think they are. So they start telling people what to do and what they can and can't do. And it's not their job. It's not their position. And in most cases, they can't even tell you what to do. They just think they can. So if you're like, nah, sorry, then they just go away. But the good majority of people, we're people pleasers. We don't like confrontation. We don't like people to be mad at us or angry at us. So you just do what you're told, which is why all this madness has happened over the last couple of years, continues to happen, because you have mainstream media spreading a bunch of nonsense from the politicians, though the politicians are paying the mainstream media to reinforce what they're saying. So it's all a giant circle of nonsense. But my point here is that we need healing. Like, we need a long stretch, not just a few months, not just a summer. We need years of healing for people to start to treat each other properly again, for people to start to use compassion in their brain and not just to use their position of power or their position of authority in directing people on what they should and shouldn't be doing, especially when it's none of their business. And in most cases, 99.9% of the time, it's none of their business to be trying to regulate what people are doing, like what people are doing with their medication or their own body, what people should be doing outside or in grocery stores or at the post office. Absolutely none of their business. And that has been happening for 2 solid years. It's not like it happened for 2 weeks or 2 months, 2 years. So just think about how long it's probably going to take 5 years if the nonsense finally goes away and they don't keep bringing it back, which I believe they're going to keep trying to do. But if that continues to happen, we're never going to get a chance to heal. We're never going to get a chance to exercise that compassion and belief in one another and respect for one another. But my point is that we have to let people live. Let people live. Like, if you look at the deep and restrictions that we were on, people were isolated in their homes. Isolation is the worst thing you could possibly do to an individual. That's the worst punishment. In jail, in prison, you do that to the worst criminals in the world. You put them in isolation. They lose their minds. They go absolutely crazy. And we've done that to people in our society who are still afraid of people. They're still scared to go outside. They still got their 3 masks on and they're quadruple boosted or vaxxed or whatever it is. And like, we as a society have not only created that fear, but we fed into it and we've helped it live and thrive and survive. And if we don't do something about it, we'll never get to that healing phase where nobody feels like it's okay to tell you can't work out a park because you should be able to work out at a park, where no one's going to tell you how to grocery shop or what to wear. What's worse about it is we've had friends and family in the same position. Oh, if you don't have certain medications, maybe you shouldn't be around us. If you don't have, you can't come in my house. We've had friends and same deal. If you don't wear this, I don't think we should be hanging out. Like, it's absolutely bonkers. It's madness in any way you look at it, that people shouldn't be putting restrictions on, especially if they're your loved ones. My gosh, I could see maybe someone that works for the government, like someone at the post office is like, hey, you got to do this. The government said so because they pay us and we have to do what they say. That may make a little bit of sense, but friends and family telling you what you can and can't do. If you want to be my friend, if you want to hang out in my house or act like a loving family, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. That was an end rant to exactly what happened, but that's what I believe. That's what I believe why that happened is because that's going to continue to go on until we get a chance to heal as a society and come together and be like, you know what? That's their choice. That's their decision. They get to do what they want because they're a responsible adult. And that's all there is to it. So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you coming in and hanging out with me. If you want to check us out, we're at trueformlife.com. As many of you know, you can check out any of these podcasts on your favorite podcasting platform. And then you could be possibly listening on terrestrial radio as well. All these past shows are on exploringmindandbody.com. And then you find us on social media. We're quite active there, always spreading the word on health, happiness, goodness, be good people, protect the earth, do the right thing, love one another. That's what it's all about. That's it. That's all I got. I'm out of here. As always, I'm your host, Drew Tadia, in health and fitness for a better world. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Exploring Mind and Body with Trueform Life's Drew Tadia, fitness expert. To find out more about the show, Drew Tadia, or to listen to past shows, visit exploringmindandbody.com.